Those of you who watch my YouTube channel and who subscribe to it know that this is not the channel currently where you go to get what I will call basic fundamental astrological transit information in a steady way. You know, I do my videos. I'm really not giving this channel a whole lot of push in terms of monetizing it, and perhaps I should. I practice astrology professionally, but I do this channel really out of the love of doing it, and as a result of which the content occurs when I have time to, it gets made when I have time to do it, doesn't necessarily follow a very solid structure other than I'm pretty committed to making sure that I do new moon and full moon videos. All the new moon videos are put up, you know, after the new moon, and full moon videos before the full moon, as those of you who follow these videos know. But also, I tend to do my videos as the information becomes clearer to me and as I feel called to do them. Today's video is very much an example of that. In my mind, the next video that I needed to do or wanted to do was Venus's transit in Taurus, but today this particular video theme came up over and over again. And then, of course, by the time it got to the afternoon here in California, we got results of the George Floyd trial, and it all sort of clicked. And all day, it was as if sort of things were percolating and getting clear. The other part of it is that my videos are rarely about social or political things, and they apply, and they, I think, are the most useful for each of us personally, on a personal perspective. And the bottom line right now is that there are two sets of squares that are very relevant to our day-to-day experience right now. The new moon in Aries was conjunct the planet Venus. The new moon that occurred about a week ago was conjunct the planet Venus in Aries, and it squared the planet Pluto in Capricorn. And Venus and Mercury and now the Sun have since moved into the sign of Taurus, and in Taurus they're going to square the planet Saturn in Aquarius. So we have Aries and Capricorn, that square encoded till about April the 11th, till the next new moon, because whatever occurs at the time of a new moon sets the theme or sets the tone or is being worked through for about 28 days after that new moon. So we have the Aries Capricorn square that was encoded about a week ago and that we're going to continue to feel for the next 3 weeks. I would argue that we're going to feel it strongly for another week or so. After that, we're going to deal with the results of it and it'll start to die down. But we are certainly by the end of this week, actually within a few days, maybe even now, going to start to feel the Taurus versus Aquarius squares of Venus and Mercury square Saturn on the same day, on the 25th of April, I believe, and then the Sun square Saturn from Taurus, Saturn and Aquarius on May the 3rd. At the same time, these planets will be conjuncting Uranus in Taurus. So new moon conjunct Venus last week in Aries, squaring Pluto in Capricorn. Since that time, Venus, the Sun, and Mercury move into Taurus. We have Saturn sitting in Aquarius, and we have Uranus sitting in Taurus. So these three planets, the Sun, Mercury, and Venus, are going to conjunct Uranus over the next week or so, and over the next week and a half or so, 2 weeks or so, they're going to square Saturn in Aquarius. Now, I have covered the Uranus in Taurus, Saturn, and Aquarius square in a different video, which I will put a link to once I'm done processing this video. But let's go with the first of the squares. When I did my new moon in Aries video, the new moon in Aries, I was a little bit in denial of this square. I mentioned it, I gave you the information, and indeed the last video I did, which was my last compass video, addressed this very square insofar as I described it, and I think that we're getting over this energy, but we've just had a verdict today that, you know, that reflects both these sets of squares. Again, I want to bring it back to the personal as opposed to the political, but, you know, Aries is very much a sign of me, my liberty, the purity of my intention to be able to pursue my life and my goals, my life force, and Capricorn is a sign of the importance and the maintenance of rules and conservative hierarchies. And Pluto has been in Capricorn for a while, transforming our understanding of what it means to be successful, what the rules need to be, what does it mean to have hierarchy, what does it mean to have enforcement. And Pluto, planets like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are very, you can't really predict how they're going to function. They almost at times strengthen in order to weaken. A transformation, you know, by the time Pluto's done with the Capricorn transit, that part of your chart and what that sign has stood for a while will go through, for hundreds of years, will go through a death and transformation, and it is in process. And we have had Saturn and Jupiter through 2020, 2017. End of 2017 is when Saturn entered Capricorn. We had Jupiter there in 2020. Part of the reason why I was denial about this square was I just didn't want to revisit the Capricorn energy again. Who wants to? I was so excited about the grand conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius in December, and the fact that the planets moved into the Aquarius, and we finally had the election behind us. I was just like, really? Personally and socially, do we have to go back and experience this? Clearly, in some ways, we did. Personally, as I've talked to you before, squares are when planets meet up at a 90-degree angle. So I have before in this video described it as planets kind of doing their transit, and they somehow at a 90-degree angle lock each other into place. It's like a stare down. It's like they prevent each other from progressing without some sort of quantum leap and transformation that can break this lock. Another way of describing it is, because this is a 90-degree angle, it's like two cars coming to a stop sign at the same time. And then there's this thing that goes on around, are you going to go? Am I going to go? We can't go together. Who's going to go? There has to be some sort of flash or quantum leap of understanding so that, in this case, the Aries planets can continue to move forward fast, whereas the Pluto vehicle is actually getting ready to reverse because it's going to go retrograde in a couple of days. So we have this idea of a stare down, socially, politically, in the planet of individuation and don't mess with me, and my will, my goals, my truth, my right to pursue my life, and the sign of Capricorn going, hold on a second, you have responsibilities, these are the rules, this is how I enforce it, this is how hierarchy is felt, this is what a president is, this is what a prime minister is, this is what the police is, this is what the military is, this is how we impose these rules. That kind of stare down. More directly, how it will be felt in your chart is one of two things. One set of energies, as I said, is going to dissipate, but we're still going to be dealing it for about 3 weeks, because whenever there's an energy or a transit at the time of a new moon, it encodes it for the next 28 days. So till the next new moon on around April the 11th in Taurus, we're still dealing with this energy. Wherever Aries sits in your chart, whatever house it occupies, what that house stands for, and wherever Capricorn sits in your chart, there's a dependency. In order for the new moon in Aries to be successful, something in Capricorn needs to be transformed, and it's been waiting to be transformed. It's the next set of transformations that needs to occur in Capricorn. And that transformation in Capricorn cannot occur and is dependent on this push in Aries. It's the pursuit of what you want to pursue in Aries and your impatience around it that is going to, it's like an egg is sitting in the sign of Capricorn waiting to be hatched. And it cannot hatch until the Aries energy forces it to. And the Aries energy will force it to, because the Aries energy can't get very far until this transformation occurs. So if you know and understand your chart, know which house Aries is in, which house Pluto is in. For instance, if the new moon in Aries occurred in your 9th house and Pluto in Capricorn is in your 6th house, then you are going to have trouble pursuing your goals in the way you want to unless something in your day-to-day routine and the way you handle your day, your diary, your calendar, your productivity changes. And it's very likely that it's pregnant and it's been waiting to change. But there's going to be the only way I can move forward and achieve what I want is by making this change. The only way this change can occur, which I know is good for me, and intuitively I've felt it for a while and can feel it coming is going to happen, is if I commit to doing whatever it is that's new moon in Aries is trying to get me to do. If Aries is in the 10th house of career and Pluto is in the 7th house of committed relationships and legal affairs and marriage, is it something in the marriage that is waiting to be transformed somehow to free something from a career perspective, your career goals? More likely something, it's a business partnership, it's a contract. that, it's a change in the way you relate to a business partner, a client, maybe a marriage partner, that needs to happen in order for you to pursue your career goals, and is going to happen as long as you commit to those career goals that you have right now in the shorter term that feel so meaningful, because that's the only way this relationship shift that needs to happen and that Pluto is going to make happen can happen a little bit more easily, etc., etc., etc. The other way in which we are feeling this energy very much in our chart has to do with the fact that over the past week, week and a half, we may have felt like we were involved in some sort of power struggle. Somewhere our own will and freedom and Aries-like energy was clashing with some sort of colder Saturnian, with the Sun and Mercury and Venus in Aries as they were till very, very recently. We may have been feeling like, this is me, let me go, let me do my thing. I know who I am, I know what my truth is. And somewhere, some authoritarian figure or some old rule book or something that's waiting and needs to be transformed was somehow, as I said, a movable force, Aries, meets an immovable object in Capricorn, and there is some sort of a power struggle. Now, the Capricorn energy is going to feel more sinister and is going to have more power over the situation. So even if you feel you're right, you may have felt that it can't be a direct confrontation unless you're really ready to pay for the consequences. Like you lose your job because you yell at your boss, or so there has to be a way in which to effect the transformation in order to move freely. But there's also something about this Aries Capricorn square that is very important, because at the time of the new moon last week, there were two other transits, Mars and Jupiter trining, Gemini and Aquarius, the North Node and Saturn trining, Gemini and Aquarius, long-term, foundational focus on our success and our progress that was also encoded. So it could be that somewhere this power struggle forces you, frees you to move towards the future in some way. It could be that the existing situation is transformed or you leave it, or it's transformed in such a way that some adjustment has to be made. The struggle pushes you forward. Now, the squares between Taurus and Aquarius on a personal level will be felt very clearly by the fact that Uranus is in Taurus, and wherever the Taurus part of your chart is, you are going to become more authentic and liberated in that part of the chart. People may even see you as somehow rebellious in that part of the chart, more true to yourself, less patient with restriction wherever Taurus sits in your chart, what house it occupies. But from the Aquarius part of your chart, there is a need to solve something there that frees up this liberation process. So, and the way it's going to be freed up is that Jupiter this year may give you an end of a 12-year cycle and the start of a 12-year cycle where Aquarius sits and ignites the flame. But with Saturn hanging out in Aquarius till 2023, it is very important, as I've mentioned before, not to fall into the path of least resistance and to keep making the same mistakes that you've been making, because Saturn's purpose in Aquarius is to say what has not been working in this part of the chart, what behaviors and patterns are self-defeating that are holding you back from your highest potential, where are you not holding yourself worthy, where do you need to build a spine, where do you need to get real, where do you need to be unemotionally detached, kind of cold and clinical about determining what needs to be cut out, what needs to be changed, what needs to be transformed. The change or the transformation is hard because it has to do with us and our patterns and behaviors. And Saturn is the strict teacher that is helping us excel. So you are an Olympic athlete. Saturn is the coach that makes you successful. And it's unlikely that that coach is going to make you successful without, on a daily basis, pointing out what you need to work on. So whatever you need to work on in Aquarius to build a long-term foundation under Saturn somehow is the missing piece, or the next piece that allows Uranus to continue in its transformation. Saturn is going to go first because Uranus is hanging out in Taurus for 5 years, and Uranus is going to go retrograde, or rather Saturn is going to go retrograde soon, and it's going to square Uranus for the second time soon enough. So the squares are being activated again. So you're going to feel like, because there's so much emphasis in Taurus, the Sun is in Taurus, Venus is in Taurus, Mercury is in Taurus, Uranus is in Taurus, leading up to a new moon in Taurus on April the 11th, you're going to feel this push to right now processing, right now opportunity, right now quantum leaps of understanding and actions being taken wherever it is that Taurus might be. And then with the new moon, even more being put into action. But somewhere Saturn is going to be sitting there on your tail going, I'm here. Not path of least resistance. Are you going to get the same mistake again or not? Solve me. Figure me out. We've got reality check. So all that liberation and enthusiasm in Taurus is going to be dealing with some sort of a reality check, the demand for excellence, or demand for not, wherever your Aquarius is in your chart, not following the path of least resistance, not going back to doing what you did before that isn't really working. And often with Saturn, issues of self-worth and issues of taking yourself and your potential seriously have to be addressed. So we are in the middle of these squares. The Taurus Aquarius squares are not going to be felt. You're going to start to feel them as this week goes on. The Aries Capricorn squares have already been felt. The only other thing I will say on a more public or political sense is that I do associate Saturn's entry into Aquarius even in early 2020 and then for good in December 2020 with the Black Lives Matter movement. And remember, Aquarius is a sign of social justice, rational social justice. And wherever Saturn goes, it's a question of what's working, what's not working, what needs to be changed, etc. Jupiter's there this year. So fascinating to me to see where things are at today. And I don't think, this is not something that's solved in a day. And even with this case, who knows if there's going to be appeals and where this is going to go and where this is going to lead to and all that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is there's something about the energy of Uranus and Taurus and Saturn and Aquarius that is a little puzzling, because Uranus, the sign of liberation, is in a sign, Taurus, that is not really for a lot of liberated, quick action. Saturn is in its own sign, It is a question of Taurus is a sign ultimately of self-worth and living the good life and feeling like you have the right to live the good life, which is a natural bestowing of God upon you. The good life as deployed, it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be billions of dollars in the bank, but it's a question of what billions of dollars in the bank do you feel like. It is about natural flow. The other thing I will say is that it's very interesting to me that it's Venus, both astrologically and even the tarot, that is associated with justice. The card of justice, the Libra card, the sign of justice, Libra. And often the iconography is feminine. And somewhere within this iconography is the idea of bringing things back into a natural, more harmonious flow. What feels right, what is right. And Taurus is a sign that is preoccupied by everything feeling right. After the haste and spark and energy and aggression and action associated with Aries, Taurus is just like, calm down. Everything in its own time. The seed has to grow into a seedling, has to grow into a shoot, has to grow into a young plant, has to grow into everything in its own time. Natural flow, growth, cannot be rushed. In the meantime, enjoy the abundance. Taurus is a sign associated with self-worth. So liberation related to a sense of self-worth is dependent on moving to a next level when it comes to issues related to social justice. And both these sets of squares can be felt on a day like today, which can act as sort of a pivot between the Aries Capricorn squares, which we've been feeling up till now, continue to feel for the next 3 weeks, but especially after a week or so with decreasing intensity. The work is done. You're going to make the transformation in Pluto in order to achieve the goals in Aries, so you're going to be really frustrated. You're going to achieve the goals in Aries that are part of this new moon cycle and the opportunities, and that'll help make the transformation in Capricorn. The issues related to Taurus and Aquarius are going to have a lot more lessons related to them. They're going to feel a lot more sparky. They're really going to feel a lot more challenged, because you're going to have this liberation. I know I need this in order to move to the next quantum leap or level, but these planets have not yet felt the rigor of Saturn, and they're going to in the next week, week and a half. So I'll continue to monitor the energy and report on it. But again, with a very different tempo, we're going to have the same movable object kind of hitting some sort of an immovable force. We're gonna have Venus, the planet of opportunity, and Mercury, the planet of communication, and the Sun, that stands for us, have a stare down with our dark side, or with our set of habits or patterns that are holding us back. And Saturn's going to give a very clear message before we head to the new moon to say, not so fast in Taurus, or you want to move fast in Taurus, here's your test. Saturn, wherever it is about a test. And so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out socially and politically as the week progresses. But week and a half progresses. But on a personal level, continue to be prepared to be challenged. But these challenges and squares are part of what will continue to move us forward. You're going to feel it as necessary work. You're going to feel it as necessary work. Remember, April and the first half of May, but particularly April, is forward movement. Think of where you were in January and think of where you are now. Just, I talk about forward movement and static movement a lot on this channel. I rest my case, So enjoy the forward movement, deal with the tussles, deal with the discomfort, do the work, create the new out of the unrest of the present, would be the message. One more thing that I'm going to go ahead and address. Planets in Aries squaring Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto is the planet of death and transformation, so somewhere issues related to mortality. We're also getting closer and closer to the eclipses in May. So issues related to mortality are going to become more and more present, whether it is news of somebody else's mortality, people transitioning. It's sort of, we're getting to that window where all of this starts to expand. And it's a little bit disturbingly reminiscent, some of the things that are coming out of, for example, India this year, that are very reminiscent of news we were getting out of Italy last year, with this kind of eclipsy horrors of COVID. So just, there is people's situations being eclipsed out of our lives, and I send support and good wishes to anyone who is affected or impacted by this. Take care of yourselves and those you care about. If you found this video useful, feel free to share it. As you know, on this channel, you will likely, I'm going to just trust that the information that I'm providing is information that you may not find anywhere else, and information you get somewhere else is information you may not find anywhere else either. It's not a question of superiority as much as just a question of, I'm constantly thinking about how can I give you some information that you can't easily just get somewhere else. And it's not like I'm deliberately seeking it out. I get the answers. I set the intention. Today's video, I feel like I was asked to deliver this content. So for those of you who know your chart, it's time to reflect on what you want to get done in Aries and how the Capricorn side of the chart requires a transformation and is waiting for that transformation so you can proceed. And it's a heads up to say, you're going to be ready to go in the Taurus part of your chart, but something from the Aquarius part of your chart is going to come up and go, hold on, is it A or B? It's a test. Are you going to pick A or B? path of least resistance, or taking yourself more seriously and doing the hard work. And it's going to come up in the next week and a half. You're going to be challenged to step up. Feel free to share the video if you find it useful. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click on the bell icon to be notified whenever I do new videos. My contact information is in the description box, so you can always reach out to me to inquire about rates for readings, or if you want me to make an easy-to-read version of your chart that tells you which planets are in which houses, what those houses stands for, what signs and which houses. You're basically a more literate version of your chart that you'll find online. You can inquire for rates related to that too if you're interested. Do not send me your personal information like your birth time or date or location until you get my rates and you're comfortable that you want to move forward. I will leave it at that. And until we meet again, thank you.